Test. Good morning. My name is Susan Reardon. I'm the staff hearing officer, and I call the meeting of Wednesday, October 30th to order. Today we have 3 items on our agenda, and I haven't received any requests for continuances or withdrawals or postponements, so we'll hear them in the order that they appear on the agenda. And I don't have any announcements or appeals. I was wondering, is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the first item, which is 101 South Lacumba Road, if the applicant would like to come up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great plans. And the photos, too.
Good
Anytime
morning.
you're ready.
This project site is located on the corner of Lacumba Road and Lacumba Lane. It's currently a gas station that has been vacant for a number of years. The project proposes to demolish the existing buildings on site that were used by the former service station and construct a new 4,737 square foot commercial building with a 25 space parking lot. And that is shown here on the next page. Sorry, I'm hitting all the microphones. The building has been oriented towards the street, consistent with the urban design guidelines, where you pull the building closer towards the street and park behind the building, providing a pedestrian-friendly streetscape. The building is over 15 feet in height and therefore has a 20-foot front setback, which is indicated by the green, and I don't know where the pointer went. Right here. And then parking and structures less than 15 feet in height would be having a 10-foot front setback, which is shown here. The applicant is requesting a front setback modification to allow the building greater than 15 feet in height to be constructed within the 20-foot front setback along Lacumba Road and Lacumba Lane, as well as a front setback modification to allow the trash enclosure and bicycle parking within the required 10-foot front setback on Lacumba Lane. When staff measured that 10 feet previously, I had carried this property line through the planter, and the bicycle parking appeared to be within it, but it is not. And the third application before the staff hearing officer today is a development plan for 3,000 square feet of additional commercial development. Under the city's growth management program, 2885 of the municipal code, this project site under the prior pending category was allocated 3,000 square feet of net new square footage. They are allowed to demolish their existing building, which the applicant has, I believe, field measured at 1737, and they will be allocated a demolition credit for that 1,737 square feet, in addition to the 3,000 square feet of net new square footage. The site is actively under remediation under the County of Santa Barbara's Public Health Department, who has approved a remedial action plan and a soils management plan. I think they approved the revised soils management plan in August, which addresses this particular redevelopment of the site. They will be relocating a few monitoring wells, installing a new well. Actually, it's one relocation, one new well, and piping from an existing monitoring well, number 25, over to the proposed remediation equipment that will be up in the northeast corner of the lot. The traffic analysis that was done for this project was done reviewing the project as a vacant parcel, and the Transportation Division used calculations like if the whole building became coffee shop, which because of the parking constraint, it could not do that. If the whole building were to become parking, our coffee shop use, the peak hour trips is 9.87. A project-specific impact is not found until there are 16 traffic trips. So we are below the city's threshold for project-specific traffic impacts. The project was found to be consistent with the city's traffic management. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the exact title, and that's why I'm going to my notes here. The Santa Barbara Traffic Management Strategy that is called out in 2885.050 of the Municipal Code. And that part of that traffic management strategy includes the 16 trips. So I just wanted to point to that. We consulted with the city's environmental analyst, and the environmental determination was made that the project would be exempt from further environmental review under CEQA section 15183, which is a, sorry, I have to go to here. It allows the city to use existing environmental documentation, such as the city's general plan program, EIR, to tier off of. It's a sort of tiering, that this is not being required to have additional mitigation measures. There are measures to manage the contamination in the remedial action plan and the soils management plan that were approved by the county. But the city is not imposing any mitigation measures for this project because we believe they are extensively covered in the existing EIR for the general plan and the remediation action plan and soils management plan. The project, as it is a shell building. It does not have tenants proposed at this time, but the architect did use space planning to allow for flexibility of the use of the building. It could have a small cafe or restaurant. I don't believe they have tenants already. They did provide a few extra parking spaces over what would be required for a general retail use, which is park at 1 per 250. Commercial or restaurant uses are parked at 1 per 3 seats, so they would need a few additional seats if they had a small cafe or restaurant in this location. The ABR reviewed this project twice. Once, they found the project consistent with the urban design guidelines. They liked the feel of having these tables and chairs out in the front corner. They thought it would bring a liveliness to the corner of the property. We did have the project go back to ABR to have the project reviewed for consistency with the Upper State Street study design guidelines. And the board did review the guidelines, and they did find that based on the pattern of development, which you can see, I don't know if this will show up well on TV.
I actually have a bigger
version of that.
Just a map that might be helpful.
Okay. So this shows the general area, and then we have some pictures of the individual buildings that show the existing development footprint and pattern of development along the streets, where the buildings are much closer than 10 to 20 feet to the street. So in reviewing this project, we work with the applicant to make sure that the building's footprint was a minimum of 10 feet. The actual footprint of the usable floor area was at least 10 feet from the street. We did allow trellis and awning type structures to encroach closer to that. And in the case of the trellis here at the corner, you can see there's posts here, and they're located about 3 foot 6 inches from the public right-of-way at the closest point.
Is it open trellis?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll get to the elevations in a moment, but we did feel that those were pedestrian scale amenities that are consistent with the Upper State Street design guidelines. They do provide shading on the south-facing windows along LaCumber Lane, and also define the individual or potential individual tenant spaces if it were to be broke up into multiple tenancies. Sorry, my fingers are not working. I just want to kill that microphone today. Knock it off the table. So you can see this is the corner element, which has the highest height of 20 feet 6 inches. The second portion here steps down to 16.6, and then we go down to 15 feet, and then the trellis type or awning type structures are 9.5 feet at the lowest point. We do have...
This is the same 16'6" height.
Across there.
Yeah.
This is the little wall that is shown on the site plan next to the bicycle parking and sidewalk to the parking lot here, or trash enclosure. I do not see the elevation of the trash enclosure.
It's the same height.
Same height, though.
Note references, yeah.
Okay. So as viewed from the tenant to the east, we would have this elevation here. We do have a public comment letter on hand from Mr. Ken Levin, and I believe Kenneth Levin. He will speak probably under public comment. We also received a letter from Paula Westbury, who had some concerns about the size and scale of the project, as well as wanting it on record that all trees should be saved. That may be an issue because of the contamination. We'll have to see what trees can remain or what trees will be planted with the new project.
So there's no landscape plan yet?
Not formal.
No.
Okay. This is just a graphic of areas where you're proposing landscape.
Correct.
Correct, yeah.
With that, I will turn it over to the applicant, but staff is supportive of these proposed modifications and has reviewed the project to be consistent with the development plan standards. And there are findings for the environmental determination in the staff report, as well as the development plan and each of the modifications.
Okay, and several conditions.
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you. Would you like to state your name for the record and
Yeah.
add any additional ones?
Jeff Hornbuckle, Cornell Angelitis Architects. Thank you, Suzanne, for... Oh.
Closer. It's on, but nope,
Oh.
just closer.
So I think Suzanne did a great job. I think there's just a couple additional comments that I would like to make. I think it's worth noting the large tree on Lacumba Road is planned to remain, as well as the 3 pine trees along the north property line. In locating the building as we have at the corner, in an attempt to respond to the corner, it also allows the building to be set back from the interior property lines. So we have 11 foot, 9.5 at the north property line, and at the east it's just over 68 feet from the eastern property line. And then again, the pine trees, will add as a natural buffer between the properties. As Suzanne noted, we have maintained the 10-foot setback across both frontages. The closest massing is 10 foot 10 inches, which is also 15 feet tall, so that meets the requirements. These next 2 massings this one is 14 foot 9, and this one is 15 foot and a half inches, and those are the 2 that exceed the height limitation by 18 inches, and then the third, which is set back 28 and a half feet and is 20 foot 6 inches tall. As she also mentioned, we've met with ABR several times and received very favorable comments. It was important to ABR that we provide some articulation in the facade as well as the building height, so that it's not just one big mass, 10 feet from the property line. So that's where we are.
Okay, what are you planning in this area over here? Any thoughts on it?
Landscaping?
And just a walkway to the street?
Yeah, I mean, this is just to connect, the street to the rear of the property. We have talked about just planting this whole thing out. I would think that would be something we'd, want to get feedback from our landscape architect and, work that out with ABR.
Okay, it's not a required path of travel, right?
It's not a required path of travel. Yeah, I mean, this is really our main path. So.
Okay.
I just want to mention that is one of the areas of the concentrated contamination. So I have a condition in here that any infiltration or stormwater management or infiltration plans should be reviewed with the County of Santa Barbara Environmental Health Services Division because we don't want to aggravate that plume and cause it to expand.
Sure.
So that is an area of a benzene plume.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay. Now, you explained your thought process on the location of the building relative to the setback. Now, the trash care area is within the 10-foot setback. Can you kind of explain your thought process while
It
it's
is,
there?
yeah. I mean, I think originally we had it at the back of the site. Staff was concerned about how it would be, serviced by the trash trucks and just how the parking lot would function. So we decided to move it up towards the front of the parking lot so that it's easily, accessed by trash trucks. It is within an enclosure. The enclosure is 4 foot 6 inches tall, and it is 5.5 feet from setback from the back of the sidewalk. I think it's also important to note that we're providing 8-foot sidewalks at both frontages, as well as a 4-foot parkway, and then for this portion at La Cumbra Lane, a 6-foot sidewalk and 4-foot parkway.
Okay, in this area, there's none now. Somewhere over here. Over
Here.
Parkway?
No, sorry,
Sidewalk.
no sidewalks. You're doing a connection.
Yeah, I think there's an existing survey here.
Oh, yeah, okay, right here. So this,
Yeah, so the sidewalk kind of stops.
well, this is a
at this
curb cut,
point-
kind of, huh?
Well, yeah, it is a curb cut, yeah.
Okay, but it
But
functions.
then it kind of functions as sidewalk, and then it's completely interrupted by a planting area, and then another curb cut.
Okay, and this area here right now is, this sidewalk here is 6 feet, do you know, or
You know what, I've kind of marked it here.
the existing versus
This
proposed?
is the existing back of sidewalk, and so we're pulling back 4 foot 4 inches.
Okay,
And then at La Cumbra Lane, we're basically pulling back 2 foot 9 inches.
okay. And then the trash, you said the wall's 4.5?
Correct.
And then the dumpster, looking on Marburg, and so the dumpsters will stick out over the wall. They're 58.5 inches high.
How tall are they?
It said 3 cubic yards, 58.5 inches tall, so 4.8 feet. Okay. I actually have additional questions, but I think I'll open the public comment because there's some, reading the letter, there's some questions that I'll probably want a response from you too. So
Sure.
I'll open the public hearing. I do have a request to speak from Ken Levin. If you'd like to come up and sit in the chair. And you know what? Is there anyone else who'd like to address the staff hearing officer on this item? Seeing no one, I usually do allow only for 2 to 3 minutes, but since there's no one else, I'll give you the 5 minutes
Okay,
so you
thank
can,
you.
yeah. Yes.
My name is Ken Levin, and I own myself and my family own the adjacent property to the subject property that we're considering. I wrote a detailed letter that I submitted by email, and I wish to incorporate that letter by reference. I want to summarize what's in that letter, but also bring up some new points that were not in that letter. Most importantly, I want to question if the staff hearing officer has the authority to hear this matter. And I do want to be clear before I start that we support quality development of the property. We think it'll be a great improvement. The existing condition is an eyesore and really an embarrassment to the community. It'll help us and help the community if we have quality development. However, Santa Barbara Municipal Code Section 2892-110B says the Planning Commission must address the issue of floor area, and this is in subsection 6, and floor area is not listed in 2892-110B, which grants the authority to a staff hearing officer to hear modifications. So my belief is that it must be heard by the Planning Commission because the authority simply is not there. Section 2885 is part of Santa Barbara's non-residential growth management program. It is Section J that defines the type of growth can occur. It's either an addition of floor area to an existing structure, lowercase e, new floor area to an existing freestanding structure, on real property containing another structure, construction of new floor area in a mixed-use building or new building on vacant real property. It does say reconstruction of existing non-residential floor area is not considered new construction. The agenda defines the request as an addition. The agenda item says that this is an addition. You can't have this be an addition because there's no existing building. You're not adding anything to an existing building. That building will be raised. It may be a conversion, but it's not really a conversion of a residential. You would have to stretch the definition of conversion to, I'm converting this old crummy building to something that's new and modern. It really constitutes new floor area, and so therefore, if you consider it a conversion, it's either over the 1,000 square feet because the old building is 1656 or 1737, or it's, if you don't consider it a conversion, which I really don't, it's new construction of 4,737 square feet. And so you're beyond the authority, even if you ignore the item in J6, it's too big. It needs to go before the Planning Commission. So under Santa Barbara Code Section 288530, Section C, subsection 1, the development plan review procedures, this section refers to which matters can be heard by a staff hearing officer. Basically, if the entire project is between 1,000 square feet, it is in the purview of the staff hearing officer if you ignore some of the other things I said. But note the word of the use "or" in the phrase construction, addition, or conversion. That's a logical "or." So whether it's new construction, addition, or conversion, the use of the logical word "or" says the square footage of the summation of the total square feet allocated to each development type must be added together to determine the total amount of new non-residential floor area. In this case, it's clear the applicant proposes 4,737 square feet of floor area. If it says it's converting the 1656, it exceeds the 1,000 square foot. So either way you look at it, this project is too big to be considered by a hearing officer. 288530 subsection C3A, development plan review procedures. This section addresses what matters must be approved by the Planning Commission. It says the Planning Commission must approve projects that are more than 3,000 square feet of non-residential construction, lowercase c, if it involves construction, addition, or conversion. Again, it's a logical "or," and it says all methods must be summed together before the comparison to 3,000 square feet. Or means any element can qualify on its own, and alternatively, it can qualify when considered when other elements are combined. Notice the use of the lowercase word in construction, which encompasses all forms of construction. There's no special definition as a lawyer might use when defining a definition. I want to call your attention to Santa Barbara Municipal Code Section 2845-008B. It discusses the legislative intent regarding traffic, that the intent should be more stringent in this upper State Street area than the base area for Santa Barbara. Additionally, the same is true for sections 2845-08D4. Front setbacks are specifically reinforced. Now, in the July 8th meeting before the ABR, it was clear, and I included this in the letter, that the people from the ABR didn't really understand the difference between the upper State Street guidelines and the base guidelines for the rest of the city. And in fact, they relied on the applicant to provide those criteria. What happened is the applicant inferred, or actually said, that you could mix there was extra flexibility for staff, he said, but secondly, he said that you could mix what was stated in the upper State Street area for a multi-story building for a single-story building, and you can't. Additionally, I want to point out that the picture that Jeff had shown with the adjacent properties, those are all single-story buildings. And the problem on those buildings is setback, not height. So this property has a height problem, so that problem is a different problem than the properties, the adjacent properties. Additionally, and with regards to setback and floor area, the authority of the staff hearing offer comes from Santa Barbara's Municipal Code Sections 2892-110B, Sections 1 and 2. Subsection 2 of B says the staff hearing offer may only act if a modification would not significantly affect other property owners. These do. These affect us. And I submit the Planning Commission must hear those matters. Secondly, Santa Barbara Municipal Code Section 2892-110A, Section 5 addresses the building height and specifically says a modification can only be approved to existing buildings. This isn't an existing building. If applicant argues this is an existing building and that it is being rebuilt, then it is an existing building with additional floor area, and subsection 5 restricts a height modification if the floor area is increased. It is. So my request is that the project and proposed modifications be reviewed by the full Planning Commission. I question if a staff hearing officer has the authority to make the findings under the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, and especially considering the Upper State Street design guidelines. I want to help ensure that the project conforms to Santa Barbara Municipal Code Sections 2845-008 and the Upper State Street design guidelines. I don't believe it does, as it currently today. And I do believe, and I heard the information staff provided on traffic, but I do think that an EIR could address these and provide the toxic studies, because I don't think it's fair to piggyback those things to what might be significant community impacts. Even if there's just really summary EIR, it would open up to a public hearing process. I do want to point out that the change of the location of the trash, as shown in the drawings, the bicycle change in location, those were not heard in a public forum. So again, I don't believe there's authority for this board to act. And we want the project to be developed. If we could get rid of that ugly green fence and put a new quality project on there in 24 hours, I'd be in favor of it. So we're not looking to delay things, but it doesn't work the way it is. We're severely impacted, and I believe it's best if perhaps informally we could work with the project's owners, and that might be the quickest way to make sure the project is in compliance and doesn't harm the neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Suzanne, I would like you to speak just real quickly about the authority, because the staff hearing officer does have authority to review this project, and just since staff made the determination PC versus show, if you could just respond to that part.
Mm-hmm. The Section 2885, it talks about the growth management plan and the authority to review. It does mention the word conversion, and when we speak about conversion in the growth management program, we are speaking about like converting a residential space to commercial space. So it's 3,000 square feet of net new commercial square footage for the site, and that 3,000 square foot is the cap for the authority to review before the staff hearing officer. It already has 1,737 square feet of commercial on site, so the development plan impacts that are considered would have been considered with the previous project. I don't know how to better explain this. Maybe I also reviewed this with my supervisor and the city planner, and this was the correct venue for this project. There was a section that you did refer to that talked about floor area in 2892-110, and that's related to it ties back to floor area modifications in the single-family residential zone.
And I did notice last night, I only found this last night.
You need to come up to the, I'll let you speak one more time because I haven't closed the public hearing part.
I apologize.
That's okay.
I noticed last night that in the agenda it says it's an addition, and yet the definition of addition says it must be to an existing building. So if you don't, and I agree it's not a conversion. So if you say it's not a conversion, it can't really be an addition because it's not to an existing building. It has to be evaluated on its merits.
Well, it is an addition. It's addition of square footage to the site. So there is existing square footage we're adding to it, so it is an addition.
But the code says, it specifically says existing building, and, and that's not happening.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 101 South La Cumbre? No? Okay, I did, like Suzanne said, I received a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury, and I did receive your first letter, and I appreciate that you gave it early. I read it and highlighted it and had some questions, so I do appreciate that. So I will close the public hearing. All right, I have some questions for you. Okay, my first one is, what's the height of the existing building?
Ooh, that I do not know off the top of my head.
Okay. Another question I have is you submitted, you took it from this. And is it, oh, can I use your big one actually?
The big one?
Yeah.
The big one.
This was really helpful. You know, the legend keys to these different buildings and what their heights are and what their setbacks are. And this is Mr. Levin's property right here,
Correct.
immediately adjacent to it. It's number 11. And it says setback 5 feet 10 inches. It says building height 19.6 inches to tower eave.
Yep.
So the building itself, do you know how tall the building itself is? Because here's a, You can see it better in this big one here.
There should be-
Here's a picture. So here's his adjacent building. So here's the
I should
towers.
have a closer up photo of it. I think.
19. So I was just wondering how tall.
Here's a better photo of it.
Okay, so up here it's 19. I'm just trying to get about height, building height. So you said to the eave. So 19 here. So
Correct.
This is probably around 15 itself.
I don't know what that height is.
Okay. The
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's.
those,
Yeah, I mean, that's difficult to determine, but yeah, I mean, it looks like it's 15, 16 feet.
okay. And then this area back here, it's the required remediation area, and then the note says 2 future parking spaces with access off alley to replace remediation. Do you have some easement to require parking somewhere else, or is this parking going to be for this building too at a later date?
Yeah, I mean, I've just shown it as future under separate permit. Yeah, there is an ingress egress easement.
Will these spaces be for this project?
Yes.
So we'll be removing some. This is shown as landscaping. Is this remediation area below ground? Or is it going to have equipment? Is there going to be landscaping here now?
There will be. I mean, if there's above grade equipment, then
Okay, so you don't really know at this time what that's going to.
I don't know exactly what the equipment is at this point.
Okay. Okay. The findings I'm required to make. I've got too much documentation. Here we go. Okay. What you're requesting is, like you said, a front yard setback modification for both the buildings, and then another one for the trash, and then, given the size of the building, you need development plan findings. In regards to the modifications, front yard setback modifications in any situation are pretty important to look at and to consider. And in this instance, there's the Upper State Street Design Guidelines, what we just completed in 2009, and there's some pretty specific guidelines in that. And it talks about modification approvals, and it says, for Upper State Street area projects proposing front setback modifications to development standards, such projects should only be approved if consistent with Guideline 4, with the inclusion of benefits for the community at large provided in quantity and quality beyond customary requirements. So it's more than just you just asked for. We have a nice building that needs to provide extra things. So when you look at what the front back considerations are for this area, it talks about the front setbacks for one-story structure, or the first story of multiple structures in the eastern and central sub-area. Well, this is in the western sub-area, so it doesn't apply with that. Number 2, again, talks more about along State Street, the north side of State Street, and east and central sub-areas. But C is general. Mountain views are preserved. So when I'm asking about heights of adjacent buildings and height of the existing building, that's when that comes into play. And when you look at the streetscape here, this is the corner. Here is the existing building. Here is the 2-story building next door, which your exhibit you submitted says it's 22 feet 10, 22 to underside of eave, so that's not even the height. It's not the ridge, it's 2-story, but the trees that obstruct the view. But you have a nice shot of the mountains through the site. So that's why I'm wondering what the height of the existing building is, because of one of these findings talks about mountain views are preserved. There's also other discussions in here about mountain views, and it says the most expansive views are occurring at street corners and intersections, and so this is one of those. So that's why I was wondering about this, the height of these buildings. And then the other one says all traffic and parking needs are met. You're actually over parked for the site with just a shell retail building. So, and then the traffic, as Suzanne's explained, the transportation staff has looked at it and looked at the worst case scenario, that if this happened to be all deli, which is a high traffic generation, you still don't have project specifics. So that one's okay. Number E is the development is a minor addition or remodel, not an entire lot redevelopment or entire new building. I think that's getting at, in general, we look at site constraints. So if you're clearing the site and there's no site constraints, you should be able to comply with the zoning ordinance requirements. And so that would be something we need to discuss. Transit, this is a corner, you can't add transit lines or bus pockets. That would not be safe. Particular site circumstances and constraints such as lot size and depth, site layout and location of parking contribute to the need for front setback modification. That might be one. This project has a number of benefits that are consistent with the guidelines that talk about pushing the building up front, having parking in the back, having landscaping. I actually did watch the 3 ABR meetings and look at the transition of the project where originally you were proposing pavement all up here. And this is a great improvement, and I hope it remains, because that is, when you look at the landscaping requirements in the upper State Street Design Guidelines, it talks about having landscaping between when the building meets the sidewalk,
Right.
and buffer between, providing nice areas, not just large expanse of pavement. So I think that's good. And then it talks the benefits for the community at large are provided in quantity and quality beyond customary requirements. So that's that second part of that first intro that I read to you on the back page. And this is where it talks about view opportunities or easements, usable open space. But when you look at, they talk about usable open space, it talks more about not in this area, but there is the provision of this outdoor area, although it's not public. You know, people go there and interface with the corners, relationship with it. So,
Right.
you know, I think that that's kind of good. Creeks, there's no creeks. Pedestrian amenities, you are widening the sidewalk. You're providing a buffer between the street and the sidewalk with the planters. You're adding this important connection. So that could be improved circulation and connectivity. Although there's not circulation between the properties, which I think this kind of points to, it also points to curb cuts, and you're reducing a significant number of them, and you're moving this curb cut farther away from it.
Right.
So I think that helps there. Lead, are you proposing any lead things? Haven't got that far.
No, I don't believe so, but we haven't gotten into that.
Affordable housing, not doing long-term easements, operation, maintenance. Although that doesn't really, I don't think this is what it's going for, but you are offering up additional right-of-way, it looks like, new
Yes,
ones?
correct.
Okay, so in terms of these that I need to look at in order to consider the modification request, I think the important ones are views, so if you can kind of talk to that. I skipped one. The proposal is compatible with setbacks and character of existing development and surrounding subareas and block.
Which one is that? I'm sorry.
G. Yeah. Now, with views, I was looking at this. We can look at the elevations.
Well,
Or maybe I'll let you talk
I mean,
first,
I
and then
think
I'll
it's
tell you
important to note, as far as views are concerned, this building can be 10 feet from the back of the sidewalk all the way around.
if it's 15 feet all the way.
If it's 15 feet all the way around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've set back, so the closer you get, even if the building is 15 feet, the closer you get to the property line, it's going to reduce your view of the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So, peeling the building back away from the property line is going to open up those views. It's going to open up the views, from the corner, these views back towards the neighboring property, as well as, up towards mountain views.
Well, that's why I was asking you if you knew how high your building is, so we can get an idea relative to this, how...
I don't know, and I mean, this is, it's not a fair comparison because this building is set back so far from the property line. I mean, you can see.
Oh, you're right, here. Yeah, because you move it up.
It's not a fair comparison at all.
Okay. Well,
But I mean, this
What-
building could be, it's not a apples to apples.
okay. Well, what I was thinking in terms of you was what you've kind of alluded to, that the pure letter of the ordinance is 15 feet high you can be 10 feet. Over 15 feet high, you have to be 20 feet.
Correct.
So what you've done in your design, the elements that are 15 feet in high are 10 feet. So this little area, for the people at home, you can see there's this area here is 15 feet, and then it steps up, and this is actually located back farther than this, and then it
Correct.
steps up, this is a lot stepped farther than that. So when you look at the site plan here, this area is 15 feet. This area here, which is 14 feet 9 inches, is just a foot higher at 16 feet. The actual 20
The height,
Height.
20 foot 6. Yeah.
20 foot 6 is actually outside the setback. So the part that is higher, it meets the setback.
That's
and then
correct.
it comes back and pops, and it's a foot farther away than this area element over here. It's 15 feet, just half an inch.
Yeah.
So 15 feet from the front property line at 16, which is just a foot higher than what.
It's actually 16, let's see,
16.
So
16.6.
yeah, and so if it was 15, the whole building is 15, it would be 10 feet setback, which
That's
this
correct.
meets this 10-foot setback. So when you're standing on the sidewalk, can you really tell a foot difference in height? I'm not sure if you really can. So in terms of the building, I think I could get to the front setback modification, looking at balancing everything with the parking improvements, how it talks about parking in rear and hiding it behind. This is visible, but you know, we want some
Right.
open. Although it's not the true activity node that's talked about in the out-of-state street area, it does have some pedestrian open areas, places, you know, if a restaurant were to go in there, it's kind of open. The public streetscape, you're improving it, how I was saying with the setback, I mean with the sidewalks, improving the sidewalks, and moving the driveway. The mountain views, the area that is higher than the 15 feet meets the setback. So that's not something that I would look at, something the design review would have to look at. So
Right.
in terms of my consideration of the modification request, I'm looking at this 16 and 15 foot area. The Architects Board of Review said it's compatible with the size, bulk, and scale. The trees, you were saying, these palm trees, they have to go because of the sidewalk, but there's not really, I'm just trying to think, there's other trees. You're saving the,
Yeah, and then there's,
there's palm
it's
trees here.
these three, they don't really show clearly. It's these three, and then the
Yeah.
large tree at the Parkway.
And then there will be some additional street trees.
Oh,
that'll
yeah,
be consistent
added.
with the
Yeah,
plan.
absolutely.
So then landscaping, and then this was the this is the study here. The Upper State Street Area Design Guidelines, Urban Design Recommendations. Your project's here, and this area indicates viewing locations to be provided with redevelopment. I think since the larger areas are pushed back, that could be okay with that. And then in terms of the pedestrian connectivity, in this diagram here, again, you're at this area, and the blue line talks about on-street pedestrian improvements connections, which you are. So you are consistent with that, providing the connections. So in terms of the building itself, I think that's that I could get there. But with the trash enclosure, I don't understand why it needs to be in the front setback. I think it should be hidden in the back. I understand that there is some constraints regarding your remediation area and then the need for a loading area, but I don't see how it's necessary to have the trash area in the setback, that it could respect the 10-foot setback.
Okay.
I don't see that. The other area that I hope that the design review boards, and I was reading it, there wasn't much discussion. I know Mr. Baumann, who's the staff person to the ABR, tried to direct the ABR into looking at landscaping, that there is the requirement for the 5-foot perimeter landscaping all the way around, and over here it is 3.8 and the 3 feet, I'm sorry, 3 feet 9 inches.
3'9", yeah.
And the design review boards do have the authority to waive it if there's adequate landscaping provided elsewhere.
Right.
I'd really encourage the design review board to look at that, since this is paving all the way up here, parking. I think that that would be important, but again, that's not a mod request because
Right.
it is put into the ordinance that it's a waiver versus a mod.
Okay.
But I would like them to look at that. In terms of the development plan findings, they are complies with all provisions of the zoning ordinance. Well, if the modifications approved, then it is found to be consistent. So that would be a discussion with the mod. The proposed development is consistent with the principles of sound community planning. That's why I was going over the urban design guidelines, because that is the guidelines that are out here. And this type of development is consistent with the general plan. It's a commercial area, envisions this type of thing. So it is consistent with the development plan. The proposed development will not have a significant adverse impact upon the community's aesthetics or character, and that the size, bulk, and scale of the project will be compatible with the neighborhood based on the project compatibility analysis, which the design review board has looked at, and I know that they were having some discussions with the architecture, and they've asked for some additional
Right.
clarifications. Again, that's the design's not in my...
That analysis is also up on that wall.
Yeah, okay. And then the traffic, staff's has discussed the traffic. I'm just making sure I got them. Okay, so I think those are all my comments. In regards to the conditions, or my comment, in regards with the conditions of approval, you gave me too much paper.
I'm sorry. The project warranted it. Conditions of approval.
Okay, yeah, now I got my staff report now. In regards to the conditions of approval, it talks about public improvements that you need to do. And you've looked at least the landscape plan, you need Tier 3 SWIMP requirements.
Correct.
And I realize that there's some potential conflicts between site remediation, because you don't want to increase.
Right. Yeah,
So I
we've
understand
talked
that
about that, yeah.
you'll be working with the county, the health services, and then the Creeks Division.
Yes.
Dust control, and then you're going to comply with the hazardous materials report that was prepared March of this year, and the revised soil management plan that was in August of this year. So
Correct.
you've read all those and you understand them?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't believe I need to add any conditions. And like I said, with the front setback modification for the building, it meets, I think it is consistent with the zoning ordinance in this instance, in that, however, the whole building isn't under 15 feet. The elements that are 15 feet are the minimum of 10 feet back. The portion that's 16 feet is a minimum of 14 feet 9 inches, and it's up to 15 feet. And then the areas that are much higher are outside of the setback. That there's the landscaping that's provided between the building and the sidewalk. And so that front setback modification, I can make the finding. I did want to delete the reference in the finding for the front setback modification that the project is consistent with the urban design guidelines, because that actually applies more to the downtown grid. And some elements could apply out here, but it's not really applicable out here, so I want to remove that. And I want to have B, that the front setback modification for the building is consistent, but the the front setback modification for the trash enclosure is not consistent, and that's denied.
Okay.
And I think there's plenty of other areas you can fit. And that I can make the environmental finding that the project qualifies for an exemption from further environmental review under CEQA guidelines section 15183 based on the city's staff analysis and the CEQA certificate of determination on file for the project, and then also make the development plan findings outlined in number C. And my approval is subject to the conditions contained in the staff report. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and that appeal is actually filed here at our counter versus City Hall. The other ones are over at City Hall, so if you decide to appeal, I just want to let you know to come here. All my actions actually are viewed by the Planning Commission liaison, and if they feel that warrants additional discussion before them during that same 10-day appeal period, they have the authority to call this up, and if we receive appeal or if it's called up, Suzanne would contact you. Okay?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Suzanne.
The next item is 1250 Dover Lane. Do you have that big, can you leave the big one of this with us? Did you take it? You want the big one, Suzanne, or?
Do you have it?
Oh, we might have.
We might have.
Might have already taken it, sorry. Yes, I already have it.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
1250 Dover.
If you'd like to come up.
Very well covered.
Having problems with plans today, apparently. Alrighty.
Anytime you're ready.
This project is an approximately 10,000 square foot lot that is currently developed with a 2,560 square foot two-story residence with an attached 378 square foot garage. The proposed project includes demolishing the existing garage and reconstructing it with a change in roof pitch within both the front and interior setbacks. The discretionary application before the show is the front and interior setback modifications to allow the non-conforming garage to be reconstructed in the same footprint with that increase in height. As you can see here on the plan, the setback here is highlighted in yellow, and the portion of the building that is within the setback is highlighted in pink. That is both in the front and interior. This is a larger scale view of that garage floor plan, which they are proposing inside the garage to install a lift similar to the one here. It actually referenced the specific model and style here on the plan. So staff pulled that from the website. Planning staff did review this application with the Transportation Division. They do not require a non-conforming garage to be brought up to current design standards of 20 by 20 interior clear when you're rebuilding a non-conforming structure. However, they usually encourage it. Staff did have some discussions with the applicant early on. They were proposing a 20 by 20 garage, but because of the location, the property does have this circular driveway. They did not want to lose the second driveway of that circular component. Staff did look at some conforming options to relocate the garage. That was not the desire of the homeowner, so they came back with rebuilding the non-conforming garage. When staff reviewed the lift component with the transportation staff, they are concerned because you're now introducing a new vertical element within the garage that could, and I'm not saying it will, obstruct the access for that second bay of the garage. So more review would be needed. They would feel more comfortable with the lift in the garage if the garage was 20 by 20. That's up to Ms. Reardon if she feels that that would be an appropriate design. Looking at how the roof pitch is changing here on the elevations. You can see on the west elevation, the yellow line is indicating where the existing roof pitch is. It was more of a shed roof element. They are turning the roof so that we now, instead of shedding, we have the, is that a gable?
Gable.
Gable style roof. And this is how it's viewed from the public street frontage on the north elevation. So this is where the interior setback is from this viewpoint and from this viewpoint. And this much of the garage at the face is in the front setback. So with that, staff can support the project as proposed with the exception that the lift would need to be reviewed closely by transportation to make sure it does not make the two ground level parking spaces unusable.
Okay.
I also want to mention that the dimension between the corner of the existing garage to the inside of this radius is about 9 feet currently.
Okay, great, thank you. Would you like to state your name for the record and add any additional?
I'm Rod Britton. I'm the architect for the owners. Yeah, this project came about as at some point. This house was built 1927, no, 26. We're not sure when the garage is an original, and you can tell because everything is a gable, and this is an anomaly. It's a shed. And at some point, these were all shingle roofs, and somebody's put tile on them. So this roof is failing. They've had to build a wall down the middle of it in order to hold it up right now. So it's essentially 2 single-car garages. And what we'd like to do is enable to put 3 cars in here. So he's found a jack. He's got 2 collectible cars that will work inside just like that. And we are actually reusing the slab, and there's a existing 18-inch concrete wall, foundation wall, a stem wall, I should say, that goes up. So we're just going to build on top of that from 18 inches up to the new 8-foot or existing 8-foot plate line. And we think that the gable roof on this one will match this gable. I think it's more in keeping, and it achieves this. Our goal would be able to get 3 cars in the garage.
Now, the interior dimensions actually, it's noted here 18, but interior, that's the exterior wall, is 17. Why not take this opportunity to widen it more now?
Because then we have to back to the left site plan. We start losing all this. And
Is that on the archive plans?
No, this.
The circular driveway is on the archives.
Oh, you? Oh, good. There you go. And it's all full
It
of
looks much larger here than it is
Yeah, it's a
physically in the
nice.
field.
It's a stone wall there with mature planting inside and all that kind of good
What's
stuff.
it
so.
scaled in here? Yeah, it's still just 17.
I'm not exactly sure how they got that rear. This one added because it's. Oh, I guess the old setbacks.
It was 5
The old
feet.
5-foot setbacks instead of.
Oh, okay. All right, that was all you had?
That's all I had. Yes.
Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1250 Dover Road, Lane? No, so no one. I did receive a letter from Ms. Paula Restberry expressing concerns on the project.
Is this the woman who writes everyone? Okay.
So I'll close the public hearing. What is transportation staff's preferred minimum dimension? I know that they grant waivers in that.
They typically would like to see 20 by 20 interior clear. In my experience, they've gone down to 18.6 by 18.6, but generally not smaller than that. In any case, they would not allow the parking dimensions to get more constrained. than they are existing when they have a non-conforming width.
Just struggling with the fact that you're demolishing the garage, rebuilding it, and not meeting even the typical minimum dimensions. I realize you're providing the lift, but if the lift would go away, it's still just 17 feet, which is really tight. And as you look at the site, I'm not sure the garage is even used now, or if it's used, it's not
Well,
used.
they can't use it because, as I say, this is undersized structurally. These are load-bearing doors essentially right now. They're holding up the header, which is holding up the roof. So we need to rebuild this wall regardless, kind of thing. It's just undersized, and this roof's got a big sag in it, so they've had to come back and shore up the middle of this wall, this roof with a wall. So we need to take the roof off and rebuild it kind of regardless. And we thought while we're doing that, if we can reconfigure the roof, something more keeping with the rest of the gables, and be able to get some additional head height in there, we can get one of the cars off the driveway.
And what you're telling me is you can't widen it any
Well, it
because of this
impinges
wall
into
here?
it impinges, we've got an existing foundation. We'd rather not start over with a new garage. And I've worked with Suzanne with it. This is about a $40,000 re-roof project. If we were to build a new garage and have to rework all the landscaping, and then, well, the original plan was to put I think you wanted the garage with conforming in here.
Well, the conforming location that we discussed
somewhere in
is
here,
in
yeah.
this general location.
So
And if you look at photographs, that general location would be in this area of vegetation in front of the chimney, but you could get a 20 by 20 garage in here.
Yeah, I'm fine with it being in that area. I just have a real concern. You know, as you can see, the garage isn't being used now, and
Right.
the circular driveway is not being used as a circular driveway. It's being used for parking. You can see there's long-term parking. When I went there
Correct.
yesterday, they were still there. So parking's not allowed in the front setback, you know, unless you get a mod. So I much rather prefer having the garage extended, meaning, you know, at least 18 and a half, maybe 20, and really get the cars inside the garage.
Then we have to rebuild this wall because we won't be able
Yeah,
to
they would
get.
have to shift this over in
Right.
order to maintain.
And this is all, it's all
Or
kind of.
cut it off, or just, you know, have it be...
Vacate that.
Yeah, like lots of people go in the garage and back out. Okay, so tell me again what transportation staff said about the lift.
They have concerns that that is now introducing a new vertical element that may obstruct access to the second ground level bay in the garage here.
Okay, so, and the required parking for single-family homes is 2 parking spaces.
2 covered parking spaces unless they meet exceptions, which I don't believe they qualify for here.
Okay, so if, now is the lift considered tandem parking? Okay, so let's say I went ahead and I approved it with the condition that the lift was required, because that would be the 2 required parking spaces. Would that require review by the Planning Commission because of tandem parking, or the fact that I've looked at it and decided it wouldn't? What's your comments regarding that? Because I know tandem parking has traditionally gone to the Planning Commission at lunch meeting. They've discussed it, and
I spoke with my supervisor, Danny Cotto, briefly yesterday, and it is his opinion that the installation of the lift would require a Planning Commission lunch item for review of the tandem parking, because it's not in your typical format where each car could individually be moved and taken out of the garage. You'd have to move one in order to take out the upper level.
Do you not have to do that with tandem parking though anyway? You have to. This is tandem parking, right?
This is also tandem.
All right, yeah.
So
It's the same.
regardless, you would have to go
Regardless,
lunch.
you have to take
So-
out one car, yeah.
if I approved it with the condition, see, I wouldn't want them to have to come back. If I approved the modification, subject to the condition that the lift is required, and then the approval's contingent on Planning Commission, does that work? Planning Commission reviewing the tandem parking? I know it traditionally comes beforehand.
I think staff would be more comfortable to have you approve the garage as a two-car garage with the option as a condition to explore the tandem lift configuration with Planning Commission at a future date. That the tandem, the lift would not be part of today's approval. It would be Planning Commission reviewing that later. I think regardless if they had the lift, they would still be doing a roof change
Right,
because
yeah,
they
that's-
can't use the garage.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I
we
think
have
it's
to
an
rebuild the
independent
roof
factor.
regardless, yes.
But the fact you're tearing down the structure and rebuilding, okay, then if that's the thing, I can't support the modification for the rebuilding of the garage with the depth at 17, with the width at 17 feet. It's too narrow.
It's an existing garage, it's existing, there's an 18-inch stem, you know.
Okay, you can demo and rebuild it as is with no roof change, and that doesn't need a modification. You
Then
want to demo and replace it and change the roof, and then you need a modification. You're changing the basic exterior characteristics of the building. So then I'm looking at a front setback modification and an interior setback modification, and I'm looking at, is it consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance? Well, 17 by 7 or 17-foot wide interior dimension of a garage is way substandard. And I fully understand that our ordinance allows you to demolish and rebuild a non-conforming structure as is. And that's not real typical of communities, but we allow you to do that. As long as it's as is, but if you want to change it, then you need a modification. And I believe in this instance, if you want to change it, that it needs to be 18 feet. The alternative would be is that I would agree to continue it. Oh, but the Planning Commission's not meeting for a while.
I don't know what their schedule is. I'm sorry.
They're not meeting until the 21st of November, and that's a joint meeting with the county. So that puts you in a pickle.
Could I meet with as I understand, this is now a transportation issue, is that what? No, not transportation, okay.
The tandem parking configuration is a Planning Commission
Planning Commission,
issue. And she's wanting feedback from the Planning Commission if they support the tandem before
Right,
she
I
takes
get it.
action. The staff hearing officer.
Talking in the third person.
Yes, sorry.
You're not here. So it's actually 17, 8.5 inside. But
Well, when you look at from wall to this outline here, it's just,
that's an existing wall that we want to take out. We want to have it one big
transportation
space.
staff could be here.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Well,
they're not available.
I have been to transportation, and they have blessed the 17.
Well, I would like to
Six.
speak to them
Yeah.
in person, not,
And the reason why I said that it may be acceptable, transportation would have to review it further, is because of the open design on the side. Typically, where they're looking to make sure we don't have any new
Door issues.
vertical is for opening the doors so you can get in and out of the car in the center line. And the way that these are, we couldn't tell how wide the actual posts are. The base is drawn much larger than it is. It's not actually a vertical obstruction as wide as the base. So
They're 6 inches square.
the
Yeah, these are base
column
plates
steel,
to fix
so.
to grade.
they're not here. They're in a meeting all morning. And you don't think it would work approving it with the, subject to the condition that PC review the tandem parking? Because I know, like with projects that go to the Planning Commission, they approve them like a coastal development permit, like an annexation. They approve it subject to the coastal commission approving the annexation, that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
why would that be different in this instance if I approve the modification subject to and you spoke with Danny about that?
I did not speak about that specific issue. My concern is that you're requiring the tandem element and it hasn't been reviewed versus just approving a two-car garage that is currently non-conforming to size, having to change in roof pitch. You're now making the tandem a
Yeah, because
requirement.
what I'm thinking is that 17 feet is not a two-car garage.
Okay.
It doesn't meet, it only provide, it
It's
only
only
allows...
17 at the ridge, isn't it?
No, this to here
Oh,
to here.
the width.
The width.
The width is only 17 feet.
It's legally a two-car garage now. We would still call it a two-car garage
Right.
in the future. So I understand how you're struggling, that you would like it larger. Just wish there was a PC minute meeting that you could continue and then have us get the feedback for you to make it cleaner. If you want to approve it contingent, I guess we can do it that way. Otherwise, it'll probably be December or January before it will be back on this agenda.
And I don't want to stall you that
Yeah.
long.
Yikes.
But then in effect, if I approved it with that condition, it would be that long anyways before they can get a building permit.
Yes, it would be at least
Can you
into
pull out the
December.
section of you have your code with the tandem,
Sure.
Well, if we met on the 21st of
it's
November,
up at the county. We have
It's
the
not
same
in our
problems with
building.
minutes. We're trying to get the past minutes approved by them because there's some discussion items, and it's not going to be until December for those either.
Maybe it's a design waiver. Oh, did I pass it again? I didn't see it. Tandem.
Well, that's for commercial. Notwithstanding any provision of this title, parking for mixed-use developments may be provided in a tandem configuration if each set of tandem parking spaces is assigned to a single residential unit and tandem parking spaces are provided for either the subject lot or immediate adjacent lot.
So this is allowed by code, and on a case-by-case basis, we've taken tandem parking in any other development, single-family residential, duplexes, multifamily. To Planning Commission on a case-by-case basis to approve it.
Okay, so how in the setback? So actually in the interior setback, the roof height's getting lower, correct?
correct.
Okay. In the front setback, that's showing,
Yeah,
this is showing the front setback here, right? And this is showing the side, so
Right.
it's going low. So in the front setback, it's getting higher. How much?
By 3 feet, something like that. This is the existing eave, which is this corner.
Three and a half.
Okay, so from the front street,
It's tough to see because of all that.
oh, you don't have a picture of the front, from the front house. Oh, this is, but the landscape, are these coming out?
Nope, we're going to keep all the vegetation. So that's the other part is this front elevation is almost a non-starter because of the mature planting in front of it.
And you don't have an existing elevation, just, so you're not proposing any windows or anything? Can you get-
No, because we're in the setback. But I am.
Oh, well, you could have asked.
There
for it.
actually are taking out one window
There
on
is
the side.
window on the side here.
That yellow highlight.
Yes, a little highlighted one. That when somebody converted it to a dark room, they blocked out anyway, so it's got plywood on the inside.
And it's how far from the front property line? I'm sorry this is taking so long.
Oops, I'm not on there. At the closest spot.
20?
It's 20 feet back.
So it's a 10-foot encroachment. Okay, Okay, well, I have concerns regarding the usability of the garage. If it is an existing situation, I do understand that you can demo rebuild exactly as is and not require modifications. In this instance, the changes you're proposing is a roof change, a roof height change. And when we look at interior setback modifications, the concern regarding interior setback modifications is interactions between the two properties. So in this instance, be potential shading while you're going lower, so that's not a concern. The other concern would be new openings, so windows and doors. Well, there's no doors, you're actually removing a window. So in terms of when you just take a step back and look what you're asking for, the interior setback modification is fine. In regards to the front setback modification, you're not proposing any additional increases in the flip, and for once, I'm asking for more. It's kind of a change in roles. So in terms of your request, you're not adding any additional square footage.
Correct.
That way. You're not asking for any new openings, which I don't mind openings in the front setback because it does provide more character and entrance for the streetscape. So in terms of front setbacks, I don't have an issue with this. You are proposing to raise the roof. Is that a big concern in this area? It's still set back 20 feet from the road. It is going up 3 feet. Is 3 feet real significant? Well, it's still low. How was the total height of the garage? Was it 13 or something?
Yeah, we're actually going to be a few inches lower.
So I thought I scaled it at 13. Is that?
And I have talked to, had this blessed by Nicole Hernandez.
this is quarter?
over in
Yeah. I was just that's like.
No, that's not right. That's when I saw the number, I was like,
75 feet.
Yeah.
This is scaling to 12
12 feet.
From the dash line where I think the finished floor of the garage
Finished
is.
floor, right, yeah.
Okay, so is 12 feet a huge concern in the front setback, 20 feet back? Probably not. So, I get back to the fact that I am concerned with the interior dimensions. But if the lift goes through, then the requirement is 2 parking spaces, and you are providing 3. And then you can look at the 2 required in the lift. And then if you really can't get a car in that 3rd space, you still have the 2.
Correct.
So I guess I can talk myself into approving the modification, looking at it, just stepping back to the basics. I'm still not comfortable with the 17-foot dimension. And if you're coming before the staff hearing officer with just the 17-foot dimension with no lift and the roof, I would more stick to my original feeling that I need more input from either Planning Commission on the tandem parking configuration or an actual determination by transportation staff. So since that lift is the component of it, I can make the finding, and with that added condition that transportation review the lift for that how you suggested. And then you saw the other condition there about the trash and storage area, or the trash. You can't, this area here can't be, this is the interior setback.
Yes.
10 foot.
Okay,
And so trash and recycled storage isn't allowed in the,
okay,
so that note needs to be taken off the plan.
all right.
Yeah, that's located outside of the interior setback. So with that added condition, I can make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve your project. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days.
Okay,
And they also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt it warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period. And
Okay.
If either of those were to occur, Suzanne would contact you.
okay, I have 2 quick, so the transportation, is that just going to be internal, or do,
I can speak to Mr. Foley when he returns from his meeting and get the ball started, but it will be between you and the Transportation Division.
I don't need okay. And then I have one other question. We had a pre-construction meeting the other day. This house is, let's say, 87 years old. These windows are shot. they're there's rot and they're warped and the hardware doesn't work. We'd like to replace this window, and these two, and this window, like for like, exactly like French casements.
The review of those windows, the urban historian will
Right,
want to
go
see the
back to it.
profile installation
Right.
to make sure that it is truly being installed the way that they are, because it is a 1920s home.
Right.
And it is potentially significant, so.
But they're all in setbacks, so you wouldn't need a mod.
Right,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Correct.
just with the designer here. Okay?
So,
I just want to ask one thing. If he did come back, say transportation could not support the lift in this constrained 17-foot wide garage, and they would only approve the lift with a 20 by 20 garage, would the applicant need to come back here for substantial conformance determination, or do you believe that that would be acceptable for staff to look at ministerially?
Without the lift
Yes.
and the roof changes and everything?
If they were to expand this wall out, say they did decide to redesign and make this 20 by 20, would you want it to return to the hearing?
Yeah, that would need a hearing.
Just want, so you know your direction.
Substantial conformance. And that would be one, I know our agendas are packed. Everyone's trying to get in at the end of the year, but I'd be willing to.
Add that to your.
Yeah, because I've seen it, it's fresh in my mind. It's something that we could get on by the end of the year.
Okay.
so as I understand it, you're going to talk to transportation. If transportation says we're good to go, can I submit for building permit?
You may submit for building permit at risk. There is a 10-day appeal period that she'll be announcing here in a moment.
Right.
And then it has to go to Planning Commission for the review of the tanning parking configuration before you can actually have
Even
the
if it's
permit
not
issued.
required?
Even if
It's not
Before
part
the
of-
building permit can be issued with the lift in the garage.
Even if it's not required parking?
Correct.
We'll have to look into that and to see what, but I need to move on to the next item.
Sure,
But these
sure,
are
I understand.
items you can follow up with Susanna. And I think I did announce the appeal period.
approval, right?
Did I announce the appeal period?
Oh, no,
I
you
thought you
didn't,
did,
but it's
okay.
10 days, right?
Yeah.
From today?
Well, I want in case people are watching at home, that my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. They also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if this warranted additional discussion before them, they would call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if that was to occur, Suzanne would contact you.
Okay, great.
Great, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Pretty certain I already said it. But the
I
last
think you did.
item is 265 Conejo Road. Thank you for being patient. Come on in. Hello.
So this project is located at 265 Conejo, which is a 2.3-acre site. It was previously developed with a one-story residence, about 1,500 square feet, that was destroyed in the 2008 T-Fire event. They are proposing to build a 2,000 square foot one-story residence with an attached two-car garage and a detached 156 square foot accessory building. This is a survey of the property showing the contours and the existing site wall that's still out there in the field. There are a few oak trees that line the back side of the development envelope area. And there's a large boulder that you can see here on the site survey that will show up on the site plan.
There's an existing wall too. Oops, I didn't.
Yeah, wall, and then another low kind of garden type style. These are some photos of the existing site. So these are the steps that are at the rear of the property, right before the sloping topography. This is that site wall that you were just pointing out. There is an oak tree that is to be removed right here. It's hard to see in this profile because it looks like it's blending in with another tree canopy, but it's this tree to be removed here.
Yeah, great.
Since the 5 years since the T-Fire, that's the most regrowth that it has seen. A previous project was approved that showed that tree to remain or be removed.
I think it was always to be planned to be removed
Yeah.
on both times.
So they are proposing with this redevelopment of the site to remove this particular tree. And you can kind of see the natural context and where the natural building pad seems to want to occur. This is an aerial or a vicinity map showing the locations of adjacent footprints and the respective photos of those residences that have been rebuilt or were existing and survived the Key Fire. So you get some neighborhood context. This is the proposed project site. The purple line that I've highlighted here is actually where the location of the front property line is. The edge of the road is further down here. They are proposing a house that is constructed 35 feet from the edge of the public right-of-way. Their required zoning setback is 35 feet as measured from the property line, which is indicated in this yellow highlight. So you can kind of see where the footprint of the building will be located closer than that 35 feet required by the code. Here we go. I think it's 2 pages back. There was a previous project that was approved in 2008, I believe it was, or maybe it was a little bit later.
Better than that.
Yeah,
It was 2009 or 10,
2011.
2000.
So here we're showing the red line outlining where the original 1951 home was. And it comes back here. So you can see that it was set back 30 feet 10 inches from the property line at that point in time, or 20 feet from the property line, 30 feet 10 inches from the public right-of-way. The orange is the current proposal. The blue line is showing the project that was approved in 2011 that was set back 29 feet 6 inches from the property line. So you can kind of see how the building has shifted. The 2011 plan was going to bridge this boulder that is here. The soils are very rocky as you start to go down the slope. That was going to be a costly project to create footings and grade beams that will be necessary for developing that close to the top of the slope. So the proposal now is to pull the building forward a little bit, change some of the way the back of the building is developed so that we avoid the boulder, avoid costly caissons and grade beams.
So here's the orange line here. So here it's actually going farther out, but here and then here.
Right. But this is the area where we know that we have that very rocky soil, and the applicant can speak more about that. Mm-hmm. They do have a soils report or a foundation exploration, I can't remember which. The proposal is this new single-family home, as you can see. Well, we're pulled back away from those boulders. This is the tree that's going to be removed. It's a 2,000 square foot home with a 2-car garage that meets the minimum 20 by 20 dimensions for a 2-car garage. And it's being located approximately 24 feet from the front property line. There is a small workshop area that we don't have elevations for, but it's 156 square feet, and it's located kind of down below the grade of the road. You can see that our contours drop off sharply from 276, and this is down at 221. And we go back to the other direction so we can get to the elevations. It's a more detailed view of the floor plan. This is the street frontage that you will see. And this property does have 458 linear feet of front property line. So with that and the pattern of the development in the immediate neighborhood, staff felt that with the building setback 35 feet from the edge of right-of-way, it still has the appearance of meeting the required setback. By moving or shifting the massing around on the property site, we were able to reduce the amount of grading overall, create less of an impact to the tree that's at the rear of the building that is to remain, with the caissons and grade beams that would have been required, because there was a deck on the previous proposal that actually spanned the entire length of the rear elevation. What else did I have in here? But in general, staff supported the front setback modification to locate the building less than 35 feet from the front property line and 35 feet away from the traveled right-of-way. The next one is the neighborhood photos.
Okay, great, thank you. Would you like to state your names for the records and add any additional comments?
Yeah, my name is Chris Kirkley, and I'm the designer for the owners. This is Kathy Johnson and Lincoln Johnson, and they are the, I guess, the clients for the house, but the property is owned by Wendy Edmonds, and part of the modification is doing due diligence because they're interested in purchasing the property. So this is one of the reasons why we are exploring this still prior to the purchase of the property. There's also some other things regarding, we had explored a two-story structure in this location to try and keep the setback within the required setback. However, we have an aging family here and also family members that are also handicapped in wheelchairs. And so we were trying to design a house that would accommodate the family members that would be staying with them, as well as this is something that they plan to retire and age in. So this is a house that we'd like to keep one level so that it accommodates elderly family members now and also future aging family members.
Okay, what, is that all the presentation?
I think Susan covered pretty much the rest of it regarding the soils report. What we wanted to do was, if we had to go above that stone, the large rock, we either have two choices, either to do a lot of excavation near that slope and start destabilizing that edge of that slope, and which is costly for one thing, creates a lot of grading, and also creates issues with the stabilization of the slope here, and also impacts this tree here, which we really would like to keep this specimen oak. The other thing is in the previous house where the one passed in 2011, there was a proposal to go higher and span this deck and cantilever over this stone. However, there's another issue with that, is now we're raising the whole building height. And what we're trying to do right now is keep this pretty much so that the two grades are going to slope in here, and then we can discharge the storm water coming in from the site. And we can pretty much keep this almost at the existing grade. We can raise this, actually it'll be up another 6 inches from this. This is actually the finished slab right here. So what we're able to do is we're able to keep this down lower, and we're not having to raise it up another 30 to 3 feet up above the site and create other issues here in regard to access. In keeping it lower, another thing that we have a perceived elevation when you're on Conejo Road. There's a perceived elevation of only 17 feet. So it reads more like a single-story structure rather than, even at the tower, it reads more like a single-story structure. So there's a benefit to us pulling it back. It allows us to tuck down further into the existing grade, the existing building pad that is there, and we're not having to do extra grading or bring in extra soil to try and slope up to the house. We're not having to pad up to the house.
It does seem pretty tall for one story, 20 feet from...
These are actually, they are going to be trusses in here. So we're not doing cantilever, we're not doing cathedral ceilings. This main part in the back is a cathedral ceiling, but the rest of it is really trusses, and we're trying to use it for attic space so we can run the HVAC and put in the FA units.
Okay. And this is just like a tower element with the windows
Yeah,
and a floor
basic-
area in it?
Basically, the site was slightly reconfigured it's very close to the original footprint that was passed in 2011, but we switched the bedroom to the other side that gets very little light, and we moved the living space over to where this deck is. We moved the living space over to this area because it gets most of the light coming in even during the winter time. And so basically, by doing this, we're providing warmth back into the house, and we're taking advantage of the solar rays that are coming in during the winter and summer. Back here, we've moved the bedrooms now where basically it gets very little light. So really the tower windows here is to try and get a little bit of light coming in during the lowest part during the winter time to try and get some light back into the house on this side.
Okay. Now, I read something about caissons. Is that just for the deck, or is the...
No, that's for the house itself. There'd be 15-foot caissons, 15 feet, maybe 20 at the most, deep. And then the exterior perimeter has a 36-inch grade beam below outside finished grade, and then the interior is 12 inches deep below the sand gravel bed. So that's what will be done then. So it's another reason why we're trying to keep it back away from here, because we either have to start digging these out, these stones, and this is fairly big, this one. I'm sure it goes pretty deep. The other option is, again, to lift the whole pad and to start having to cantilever over top of this. And then you're raising the height. And then we have a whole nother ball of wax of issues here regarding the slope and drainage.
Okay, so what's proposed here's a lot of paving here. What's proposed in this area?
Actually, I have landscape plans that are finished if you'd like to see
yeah.
them.
Because the one thing is it looks like a lot of paving for parking, and I know parking is constrained in this area, but it is in the front setback.
That was more to get a turnaround so that you could turn around, because it is really difficult. When you drive in here, you really can't come in and pull in.
No, yeah, I parked in here.
Yeah. So it's really difficult. So we're trying to provide a little bit of a turnaround space for a single vehicle. So this will all be permeable, and we did a cross-section through here, and we're showing how we're going to be taking... the soils report wants to keep at least 10 feet away from the structure of water to keep it away from the footings. So we're proposing a visqueen underlayment for about, I believe, 11 feet, and then all this is permeable, and then this all drains this way and this way into a trench, and I can show you that. I know we haven't gotten to this part yet, but while we're here, one of the conditions was a Tier 3, and I've been working with the Creeks Division because this was a disaster rebuild. Basically, I've spoke with her, and she's actually seen this plan already and said it was adequate for their discussion. But basically, we're showing that we are actually providing less paving, less I guess more pervious area than what was original. So they're actually considering demoting us down to a Tier 2 requirements for this project. And they've already been reviewing this with me. So this is the drainage, and this is all impervious. It has large pads and then decorative stone, and this goes down to a sand bed and a gravel bed. And then this all drains to this, and then what we're doing is we're bringing them down to kind of like trench swales that will absorb the water and stuff like that, and slowly allow it to dissipate into the slopes naturally. There is a natural swale over here, but in one of the considerations with talking to the neighbor down below, she had concerns with some of the stormwater coming down to her area from the previous owner. And also there's a natural swale and a culvert over there, I guess, that sometimes it overflows. So again, in taking considerations for the neighbor's privacy, which she had a major concern, another reason why we didn't want to pull this way is because we would have to start taking out more of the natural oak habitat here, the woodland habitat. And so that takes care of her privacy that she was concerned about when I met with her. And also this is taking care of her concerns with the stormwater management and in keeping it away from the natural swale that is on the property. This is a driveway section. This is the house here, and you can see how this is the visqueen that we're going to keep just for the soils report to try and keep the water away from the foundation. And then it will all come down to a trench, and then this goes down into these storm management water trenches.
Okay.
And I think this is just best management, erosion control. That's
Yeah.
okay. There was originally there was a barn over there in the setback, and that's one of the things we didn't want to do is we're not asking for anything over there, so we moved the workshop over here, and so we're not. There was a tack building and a barn over in the same thing within 20 feet. The previous house that was built in the 1950s or 1951.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Sure.
I'd like to open the public hearing. There's no one left. Made them all leave? No, I'm kidding. I did receive a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury expressing concerns with the project. So I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site, like I mentioned, and parked on the road. Look, get an idea of the trees. There's some really nice oak trees on the property. Yeah, glad you're proposing to save them. And that poor one right there looks so sad. As you showed on your plan here, I have reviewed a lot of projects out in this area. Unfortunately, it was because of the T-fire, but there are a lot of constraints in this area. This lot is actually a nice sized lot, so it doesn't have the size constraints that the other properties have, but it does have the steep slopes, the unstable slopes. It has the oak trees, that you're trying to put all the natural landscaping, whatever its name escapes now.
Woodland habitat.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so it has all that, and it's good you're using the existing building pad area to build your house. I realize that the encroachment you're asking is greater than what was there before, but in this instance, I'm not sure that it's necessarily a real concern in that just giving the existing setting in the area, the fact that the roadway will probably never be widened significantly. This is 35 feet from the travelway?
The paved right-of-way, yes.
The paved right-of-way. And this is, where's the
property line.
Okay, where's the actual right-of-way?
The actual right-of-way would be right
At the property line? Okay. So you're proposing at the closest spot, 25/9?
24. This corner,
At that corner, 24, and it's required
35.
35.
And it keeps stepping back as we're stepping back. Like by the time we get to here, we're actually, within the modification, or within the setback.
This is the setback line.
Oh no, I guess what I'm starting to say is that we're 35 here from the right of way, and we are stepping back. I think we're at almost
30 feet. Looks like 30.
we're 39.9.
But from the edge of
Yeah.
from the actual property line, it's
Yeah.
30 feet. Well, I like the stepping back idea. I think it provides interest in having that front face black wall. Given the fact of the slopes, the soil conditions, the trees, the development in that area, the fact that the property does slope down from the travelway and it doesn't feel as intrusive to you, I think that the modification is supportable in this case, and that What?
I was just saying that it was reviewed by SFDB on
Yeah.
September 9th.
Yeah, I don't actually have much more to say. I just think, yes, it is kind of a large house. It's 2,000 square feet, but is that totally out of character? It's not, it's, good size home, provides floor area. I understand your desire to keep it single level for the variety of reasons that you've explained. And I don't think it's an unreasonable size given this area of the city. So I could make the findings outlined in the staff report, and in particular, the environmental finding. This environmental finding is actually a new finding that we have to make as part of the general plan update whenever there's a new residence, since although there was a house here before it burned down, it's been vacant so long, we consider it a vacant lot. So if we add a new residential unit or even 1 square footage of commercial space like the first one, then we need to make this specific finding because we're relying on the general plan EIR. So that's why she was pointing out, like, make sure you say that one.
Say that one out. That's our
'cause-
second project with it.
Yeah, it's a new process. So, just to be legally correct, I need to make sure that I say that I made that finding based on the city staff analysis and the CEQA certificate of determination on file for the project, and then also make the findings outlined for the modification. And you've read the conditions of approval, the Tier 3, you've discussed in your presentation, and you showed me your proposed BMPs. And I saw in your landscape plan regarding the hedge height and the vegetation height within the front setback and fences and walls. So I don't believe I need to add any additional conditions. So I could approve your project making those findings outlined in the staff report and subject to those conditions of approval. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if either of those were to occur, Suzanne would contact you.
As a point of clarification, if the Creeks Division does determine this is a Tier 2 project,
That's fine. It'd be substantial performance. It's
just want to have that on record.
Yeah,
for you.
no, it's up to them. Our basic reading of the code, it requires Tier 3. But if they find that it's actually could qualify for the Tier 2, I'm fine with if Suzanne finds that in substantial conformance. My main concern is regarding, the modification and changes to the building. If you were to make changes to the floor plan or the elevations or the amount of encroachment, that would be more of a concern. SWIMP requirements are very important, but in terms of the modification triggers those, and I don't think changing that from a Tier 2 to Tier 3 to Tier 2 is going to change my finding for the modification, so I'm fine with that. All right?
Thank you. Thank you.
So I adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.